Hello, everyone. This is Steve Kovacs from LMN, and I want to welcome everyone for joining us for today's LMN Speaker Series webinar. At LMN, our focus has always been to help you grow your business. That's why we have created the LMN Speaker Series to bring you best business practices from some of North America's leading experts. We envision the Speaker Series as a forum for dynamic speakers to share their insights and thought leadership on a wide range of topics on a regular basis through virtual events like this one you are attending today. There will be time at the end of the presentation for questions, so feel free to ask your questions via the questions tool in the panel. Depending on the number of questions, we may not be able to answer all of them. With that said, let's go on with today's event. Today we have LMN's own CEO, Mark Bradley. Mark is going to provide today's audience with some great insight. Without further ado, over to you, Mark.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just wanted to, first of all, thank everybody for taking the time to join us today. And yeah, as Steve mentioned, feel free to ask questions, and I'll try to get through as many as possible at the end. So we're going to talk about a hiring system today, and going to kind of share things that I did in my company, TBG. I retired from the company last summer and sold the business to a few of my employees. So going to share some things I did there and talk a little bit about some of the forms and documents that we have in the LMN systems library in the forms section on your dashboard inside of LMN. So first off, this concept of always hiring, I don't think hiring is a seasonal thing. Of course, we do more hiring in the spring by way of being a somewhat seasonal industry, but certainly we have to think about hiring as a year-round program in our businesses, because if we want to find the best people, I think it's important that we're searching year-round, because we can't count on everybody, all of the best opportunities coming through the door in a 2 to 4 week period when we're hiring in the spring. And I guess to kind of back that concept up, this concept here of A-level, B-level, and C-level employees, we have these different people in our companies, and I think everybody instinctively kind of knows who these people are, but I think we always have that kind of top 20% in our company who are really driving things. They're driving productivity, they're driving safety, they're driving quality. Often they're foremen or supervisors, but quite often these are just really highly motivated employees as well. They don't have to necessarily be in a supervisory role. Sometimes we identify these people shortly after hiring, and we can see that they're just that much better than everybody else. I think it's really important that we keep those people, and I believe that a combination of incentives and rewards have a lot to do with keeping those people. And again, they don't have to be supervisors. They could just be those key productive employees in the company. The middle 70, if you will, to kind of coin a term from the Jack Welch book, Winning. If you haven't read that one, I'd highly recommend it. So that's the Jack Welch Winning book. The middle 70 in the company are the doers. These are the people that are actually executing the work day to day in our companies. And really what we should be focusing on with this group is training and developing these people to become an A-level, or at least have the opportunity to become that A-level person in the company. These people are super important as well, because they're getting the work done. And the more time we put into training them and explaining the company concepts as far as waste elimination, safety, quality, these types of key systems in our company have to be ingrained in this middle 70, because ultimately you want to make sure these people can operate independently and execute the work in the most efficient, safe, quality way possible. And then of course we all have the C-level people, which I think are the bottom 10%. So if you kind of look at 1 in 10, I think it's pretty easy to find 1 in 10 in most companies. That should probably be replaced. My kind of primary way of identifying these people is always based on attitude. If they don't have the attitude to succeed, it's awfully hard to change that. Much easier to work with people who have a good attitude. So sometimes these people, often I should say, these people have good skills, and it's hard to let them go knowing that these skills are there and you need to put them to work. The problem is when that attitude is persistently kind of holding back the rest of the team. Even though they're skilled, I think often they sometimes need to be replaced sooner than later. And I think, by way of, the fact that there's such a shortage of landscape employees, I think often companies are hanging on to these people too long, and they're really holding back that middle 70 from moving forward. A few sort of bad attitudes really hold things back. So we're going to kind of talk about a hiring process in more detail. And the hiring process really starts with an understanding, I guess, that you have to hire the right people. I think sometimes we get desperate. I've certainly made this mistake over the years where we just hire anybody that wants a job and see what they can do. And I think, that'll get you so far, but at the end of the day, it's much easier if you put a little bit more time into the hiring process to run an efficient company, because you've got the right people at your side to do so. So this recruiting system that we're going to talk about today has 3 main parts. First, we're going to talk about advertising careers. Second, we're going to talk about how to decide on the right people. And then we're going to talk about hiring and what that should look like in a well-run company. So first off, job ads look like this. Simple job title, status, wage, basic experience. You need to have a driver's license. The description of the job here is looking for a motivated landscape installer that's interested in moving up in their career. This is an actual job ad, believe it or not. And unfortunately, when you look on some of the job boards online, some of the really common ones out there, this is what you see. And right now you can look, and if you've got some job ads out there, have a look at yours and compare them with the other 50 or 60 job ads that are there right now for landscape. And it really is kind of a shot in the dark if you hope to attract employees if your ad looks anything close to this. I think your job ad really needs to sell your company, because great people are looking for careers. They're not looking for jobs. So first off, I think kind of change that terminology within your own company and within your own mind, that you're searching for people who are looking for a career in landscaping. You're not searching for people who are looking for a job. There's a big difference there, and I think there's often a simple way to change who's applying for your job based on the way you write your job ads, and then of course the way you process the applicants. So refer back to your mission statement. I'm going to use TBG as an example here, but your mission statement should be front and center in your job ad. Hopefully it's short enough that it can be included. I see some that get a little long and carried away. I think having a short mission that's really clear included in a job ad is a big plus, because immediately the applicant is looking at that mission and saying, yeah, that sounds like something I'd be interested in, or maybe not, maybe that's not for me. Either way, I think it's a success, because you want people who are looking for a purpose in their career, and ideally they're well aligned with yours. So I think a career advertisement should really explain your company purpose and sort of the why of your company. So you can see in this example, we're starting out a little bit differently. Awesome people deserve awesome opportunities. We're front and center. We're looking for something a little bit different here. We're looking for people who are looking for a new purpose. And we're stating our purpose. We're talking about, sort of the culture of the company as opposed to the role right off the start. And I think this is where you're going to find those people who are well aligned with you, is just in your introduction. And this should be personal to each company. Everybody has their own sort of secret sauce. And I think it's important that it's clear in your job ads. Then I think it's important within the job ad to get to the point. I think the type of people that we're advertising to in the landscape industry, the type of people are sort of fact-based, hands-on people naturally. So I think it's important to be clear in your job ad. State the role or the roles that you're advertising for. I actually think it's okay to have more than one role within a job ad, because sometimes what I've found over the years, when we have too many job ads, we find the same people just apply to all 6 jobs. So sometimes I think it's good just to have a few as in one ad, and then have a wage range. And then it's up to you to kind of sort through which position most suits that individual. So your wage range, by the way, I think is super important. If you're advertising for a landscape tech, why not put the starting wage and the top wage? You'll get a lot different applicants this way. Of course, you'll get the people that want the entry level role, but you'll also get people who are perhaps working for other companies, but just sort of seeing what's out there. If you're just advertising the starting wage, they're probably already above that, and you're not really going to get those other people looking at you as a serious career opportunity. And I found by advertising the range, we would get a lot of employees from other trade backgrounds who are just perhaps looking for something a little bit different. Carpenters, masons, heavy equipment operators, people who had great experience to offer to the landscape industry, but may not look for a job specifically as a landscaper. But when they'd see that range, it would be of more interest to them. So I think it's also important to strive toward full-time employment. I can share a few ideas of how to do that, but regionally, these things are very temperamental as far as the laws go. But setting up a legal way of paying year-round salary is definitely the best technique to attract people to work for you year-round. And definitely in some areas there's winter snow operations and summer landscape operations. And as you get further south, obviously year-round outdoor work. In any case, I think it's important to create some form of year-round income for employees, and that may be going on a year-round salary with a lot of vacation weeks in the off season, and I think year-round pay is ultimately what people are looking for, so that they can have a successful lifestyle themselves as well. So clearly stating the estimated hours per week and the job location. I think the job description is really where people make the decision whether or not they should apply. So keeping it sort of somewhat generic is okay. We're explaining sort of the details of what we're doing here. We're saying our projects involve very detailed restorative planting and environmentally sensitive areas. We're protecting waterways, wetlands, and in many cases, the built environment too. Our team is responsible for delivering our projects to our customers on time and on budget. This is no easy task. We work very diligently to make this happen. Set some sort of expectations here. It needs to be clear that you're a serious company and you're looking for career-minded people to help you achieve your objectives as a company. And then you can state, what the successful candidate's going to have as far as experience. Any specifics that you'd like to throw in there can certainly get worked into the list of skills that you'd want them to have. And I think more detail here is better. This is obviously shortened up a little bit for presentation purposes. We would certainly list a few more skills in here, but I think it's super important that your job description is clear so that people understand what the job entails. Whether you use a Facebook page or a website page or both, I think showing the opportunity that your company offers in its careers is extremely important if you hope to sort of attract the top people in the industry. I think it's important that you kind of sell the career and you show all of the opportunities that your company has, along with the wage scale and sort of how to get there. So if you're entering, as a laborer or an apprentice, and ultimately you want to become a certified landscape technician, where does that take you from there over the next 5 to 10 years? I think is really what makes the difference between attracting, sort of the B-level people compared with getting those A-level people. It's super important that they can see that long-term vision. So knowing they could become a certified trade, or knowing that they could manage work or become a project manager, whatever it happens to be. A great way to kind of share the opportunity, I think, is creating a standard wage program where people understand what the different rates are based on the skills that they've obtained. So I'm not a big believer in sort of year 1, year 2, year 3 wages, because I think, as we all know, some people progress very quickly. Some people enter our companies at different levels of skill. And then, of course, some people are happy to kind of stop learning at a certain level and just continue doing that job. And that's okay, but we have to be able to pay them what's fair based on what they bring to the table, as opposed to how long they've been with the company. I think a lot of employees have the mindset that time served equals more money, and I think it's important to kind of break that with an opportunity program that clearly indicates skills equals more money. So what we've got here is sort of a basic example of a opportunity program where we have level A, B, and C, and this kind of explains how people kind of transcend upward in the company. And then there's a job description that would come with each of these levels that would describe, for example, what a level C laborer knows how to do in comparison with a level B or a level A laborer. So there's some skills and some job responsibilities to go along with each. And again, this is in the forms library of LMN, and you can kind of customize it and make it your own from there. Another important thing, I think, that often a lot of people in the industry are overlooking is creating benefits for a benefit package for the employees. I think it's important that you really look at it. The cost per hour is relatively low. It certainly will differentiate you from other companies in your market. And I think these days it's more important than ever, because more and more as the manufacturing industry has sort of disappeared in North America and we've become more of a service-based economy, a lot of those people who traditionally would have worked in manufacturing are heading to work in service companies like ours. And the number one thing that these people are looking for is security. And I think benefits really sort of provide that security. So whether it's health and dental, or some form of retirement savings, I think these are sort of the big differentiators that the top employees are looking for as well. When it comes to deciding who you're going to hire, obviously, that last section is advertising, and we're trying to find the right people and bring the right applicants in the door. But we all know that we're not going to get all A-lister employee applications from a good ad. We're still going to get a wide range of applicants. And I think, there's a few ways that we can minimize those very quickly and sort of focus on the right people prior to holding in-person interviews. Probably one of the best ways, I think, of doing that is introducing a pre-interview step in the process. And when I did this, I found we really quickly changed the overall hiring process and made it super efficient. But the best part was our turnover rate plummeted with new hires. And the reason for that, I think, is because these pre-interview questions just bring out so much more information than you can possibly get in an interview. So it almost replaces an interview, but what we end up doing is just interviewing a lot fewer people in person. So these pre-interview questions really go a lot deeper than a typical resume. First off, you can find out why they want to work for you, what they're looking for in a career, what drives them, what are their hobbies and interests outside of work. These are important things, and these questions can be worded in a fairly detailed way. And based on the effort that they put into their answers, you can kind of make your own decision as to whether or not this person has the sort of drive or the right kind of attitude to succeed in your company. Find out how they live. You can ask tough questions like, tell us about yourself in 50 words or less. If you ask somebody a question like that in an interview, you won't get a great answer because that's very hard for somebody to answer on the spot. I know myself, I'd have a hard time answering that in a live interview. But if given the time to answer the question, you'll get a lot more detail out of somebody and you'll really sort of understand the way they think. Explain a time when you've had to achieve a goal as a part of a team. What's the biggest challenge you've had to overcome in life and how did you do it? These are just examples, but you can come up with a real long list of questions that I think bring out a lot more attitude and a lot more sort of clarity on the way people think, as opposed to some of the short answers that you get in interviews. Finding out what people really want in life. Explain your dream job. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Include your personal, your career, your financial goals. I'm always looking for people who are striving for more. If they're not really striving for more, if it's a little too short of a list, that kind of worries me a little bit because that tells me they're looking for a paycheck, not a career. So super important that they're striving for more in life. These are the people that are going to stick around and put a lot more effort into helping you get where you want to go in order to get where they want to go. So ultimately, the pre-interview is making the decision on who we're going to interview in person, but in most cases, you really actually know who you're going to hire based on these pre-interviews. Why do they want to work for you? Do they live a life that's going to really allow them to succeed in your company? And do they want enough to drive them to succeed? And these questions, I think, really, these three really help me make a decision whether or not this person is going to come to work with the right attitude and the right approach to life to succeed in my company. The more detailed these are, the better. The questions that I had for landscape staff, it was 5 pages. Certainly got some colorful remarks back by a few people who didn't want to fill out 5 pages, who thought that was just totally ridiculous and unreasonable to get a job. And it absolutely, they were right. It was way too much for somebody who just wants a job, but it's just right for somebody who's looking for a career. I think when people see these types of questions, you've immediately differentiated yourself from, a paycheck type position, and they can see that you're looking for career people and you are a career destination company. And I think the great people will take the time to fill this out in complete detail and share as much information as possible after each of the questions. So I can't say enough about this. I think it's a total game changer. If there's anything that you're going to take away from today, it would definitely be implement the pre-interview process. It totally will attract the right people and eliminate your turnover problems. So once you get to that interview phase, I think the heavy lifting's out of the way, because you're going to have, first of all, a lot fewer people to interview. The typical ratios that I've seen, 25 people apply for a job, and we send out maybe 3 to 5 pre-interviews. Of those 3 to 5 pre-interviews, we're typically only seeing 1 or 2 actually come back. And now of those 1 or 2 that come back, we're usually interviewing, roughly 50% of those people. So your interviewing volume drops exponentially when you introduce that pre-interview. The interview is really kind of a formality at that point. You want to see their personality, understand who they are in person, make sure that that they filled that pre-interview out for themselves. The reality is sometimes over the years we've seen some amazing pre-interviews and then sat down with the person and realized that there was absolutely no way that was them that filled out that pre-interview form. So certainly personality has a lot to do with it. Appearance is important. We want people who appear to be professional. We want people who took the time to show up to the interview dressed, somewhat professionally. I'm always fine if somebody comes in with work clothes on after a day of work, but even their work clothes tell me how they present themselves at work. They certainly don't have to show up in a shirt and tie to get a job, but appearance is important. And attitude, I think really, as everybody knows, kind of comes through more in a one-on-one conversation. And a few tough questions on the spot, I think, also kind of lets you know how people react to different situations. So again, the interview question template can be found in the forms library on LMN as well. The forms library, by the way, would not be available if you're just on a trial or a free subscription, but they are available to anybody on a paid subscription from day one. And there's about 700 forms and documents there for you to put to work in your business. All of them are Word and Excel based, so very easy to change and add your logo, that kind of thing. But here you see, our template interview questions are designed, to get some basic information and have a conversation with people. Questions like number 3 here, from your 2 most recent jobs, describe your duties and responsibilities. Just hearing somebody kind of describe what they were doing in their past employment has, a big impact, and it really allows you to kind of get a sense of how they look at their roles and responsibilities. I think after that in-person interview, you'll have a real good sense of who you're going to hire, obviously. And at that point, I think the way we hire has a lot to do with how successful we are in keeping people. because I know myself over the years, and particularly my first few years in business, we were kind of literally throwing somebody a t-shirt in the parking lot before work and saying, yep, okay, you're hired, you jump in this truck with this supervisor, and we'll give you a chance. And I think that kind of hiring approach is pretty common, unfortunately, in the industry. And I think it's kind of a horrible first impression of your company for that employee, first off. But secondly, anybody who's really good is probably going to find a better opportunity very quickly if that's how they kind of get entered into your company. So I think you'll have high turnover with the perfect employees because you just aren't organized or attractive enough as a company for those types of people. The career-minded people are looking for an orientation, some training, a good understanding of the company systems, and of course, they'd probably like to provide some feedback or have some opportunity to ask questions before going to work. So I think that onboarding system is super important. In the forms library, again, there's a new hire procedure. This is going to really help your office staff and your field staff come together to make sure that new employees get onboarded properly. So we've created all these forms and checklists and procedures, and they're all uploaded in to your forms library for you to use. And of course, again, you can customize them and make it work for your titles and roles and your name of your company and different things. But the framework is there, and it'll save you a lot of time from reinventing a lot of this stuff. So the role of responsibilities for the procedure, kind of who does what, who's responsible for doing all the different tasks, and obviously, a list of things that just need to happen as each employee is brought into the organization to ensure that, first off, they're getting the sort of white glove treatment and they feel important coming into your organization. But secondly, a lot of this is protecting you as a company from future legal issues in terms of, employment law, health and safety law, all these different things that are required to ensure that you're compliant with your local laws. So definitely something that should be in place. And unfortunately, we can't, provide employment contracts that'll work in every jurisdiction or anything like that. So there is a little bit of work for you to do in terms of ensuring that you're compliant with the local laws. But this procedure would certainly help you get on the right path. So again, a job offer. We've got job offers in the software for you to download and make adjustments to. For all the common roles in landscape, we've created these. You can change the titles, obviously, do whatever you want because they're Word documents. And I would suggest that you take them to a local labor lawyer to make sure that they're compliant with all of the local laws that you need to abide by as well. But these job descriptions, I think, giving somebody a job offer with a clear job description has a big impact because they're coming into the organization knowing what's expected. They're understanding what the job duties are. They're understanding, start time, finish times, what happens on holidays, if they're expected to work weekends occasionally, or what the scheduling looks like. All these details should be built into your job description so that everybody kind of is on the same page from day one. Because I think what happens in our businesses is there's a fairly common occurrence where we hire these new employees in the spring and their tank's full at that point, but as they start finding out all of this new information over their first week to 2 months, well, now I have to work weekends, and now I have to start earlier, and now I have to do these other tasks at work that I wasn't really expecting to have to do. The work's a little harder than I was thinking. All the realities of the job start to kick in. And if those weren't clear in the job offer, then I think they start to feel like they may have been sort of taken advantage of at some point, or that things weren't clear. And I think, the tank starts to empty out one day at a time, and before you know it, you're kind of 2 months into the role, and they feel that they sort of signed up for something that wasn't very clear. And I think that's where often we get some significant turnover in our businesses, just simply because we didn't really explain what the expectations were before they got hired. So job offer with clear job description is going to solve that problem. The employment contract, again, is kind of taking that to the next step. We want to be super clear on what the contract includes in terms of financial arrangement, hours of work, all the details of employment, what happens as far as layoffs and disciplinary, all these kind of details. And again, this should be reviewed by a lawyer in the jurisdiction that you operate your business, because every jurisdiction has different employment laws. Employment contracts will always be fair in that they're going to protect both the employee and the employer. But I can say from personal experience, when you don't have employment contracts, definitely all of the rights shift to the employee in most jurisdictions. So you'll find yourself sort of on the weak end of the deal if you ever had a dispute with an employee without having a contract that was very clear on how all of these things take place. Because again, it's being vague is not a defense. So super important that you have these in place to protect yourself. And I do think it creates a much better relationship long term. And each time you give somebody a raise or give them any new benefits, you need to update that employment contract either with an amendment or a replacement contract so that it's fair for the employees. And in most cases, you do need to provide a cooling period where you present that contract to the employee and you give them a week to review it, seek legal advice, sign it, and return it. So you should never hand them the employment contract and expect them to sign it on the spot. In most cases, that would make that contract null and void. The orientation procedure is also another important one that's in the LMN forms library. The orientation procedure is really quite simple. It's just a checklist of all the things that the new employee needs to be aware of on their first week, first day of employment, and who those are assigned to. So you can see on the right side, most of these are assigned to the supervisor, but reviewing health and safety policies, taking a tour of your shop and your facilities, knowing where things are like tools and safety components, understanding location of fire exits, evacuation procedures, where to have lunch, where to obtain PPE, reviewing some procedures for reporting unsafe work. These are all super important things that need to be in place. We have these procedures in the LMN forms library. If you're not using them, I would suggest taking advantage of that. But having this orientation checklist is super important for all kinds of reasons. Number one, it's the right way to onboard somebody in terms of making a good first impression. But secondly, this is protecting you as an owner from any future liability that may occur from safety and employment law. So a quick overview of the system that we've talked about today. Number one, advertising career opportunities versus posting job ads. Number two, taking the time to screen and pre-interview people properly. One thing I didn't dive deep into is reference checks. Over the years, I've found we stopped doing reference checks on field staff, only for supervisors and management. I just found it to be, sort of a dead end process in most cases with trying to interview for the more entry level positions. But I think the screening process really relies heavily on pre-interviews for field staff, and I hope I reiterated that enough when I was presenting that section, but it truly is a game changer when it comes to turnover and the type of people that you end up hiring. The interviews and another concept of working interviews. Check and see if this is legal in your area, but a 2-week working interview is a common thing that often makes all the difference as well. It's one thing for somebody to fill out a great pre-interview and give you a good in-person pre-interview, but those first 2 weeks, it's much easier to assess their actual skills, particularly for trades like carpenters, stonemasons, heavy equipment operators, horticulturalists. I think these type of people you kind of need to see, or the concept of try before you buy. What I've often done here is said, if somebody in the interview has indicated that they're looking for, let's say, I'll just keep a simple round number, $30 an hour as a stonemason, I've said, would you be comfortable working for 2 weeks at that rate while we assess your skills and come up with the final offer? And almost undoubtedly, if they're what they say they are, they're happy to go through that process of the 2-week working interview. And once that's over and we've seen their skills, then I'm more comfortable to give them a formal job offer with a rate and an employment contract. And I've found that process works really well. But again, you may want to check and make sure that's legal in your jurisdiction. And then followed by an employment onboarding procedure that I think really kind of sets you aside from everybody else in the landscape business, where people get onboarded and they understand that there are job responsibilities and accountabilities, and there is a good, strong safety program in place, and there are procedures for carrying out the work. And I think that onboarding procedure, having that dialed in, really sort of sets the tone and expectation for you moving forward in your relationship together with these new employees. So that's it for today. That's kind of the content that I hope to cover. We've got about just under 20 minutes here for questions, so I think we'll move on to questions here now.
Okay, Mark, we do have a question from Chris here. He's asking, our staff tend to be low educated but hands-on. How do you get them to fill out all of these written forms?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question, particularly for entry-level field staff. Sometimes, we get pre-interviews back that are less than ideal. You can see that they're not taking a terrible amount of time to fill them out. And myself, I feel like depending on the type of role they're applying for, we may look past some of that, but ideally, I think the most effort possible going into filling out those forms, whether they're highly educated or not, really shows whether or not they're going to succeed in your operation. And this day and age, we rely on people to use apps and a little bit of technology, like Google Maps, for example, to get from A to B, or LMN time for clocking in and out for billing and job costing. We want them to have sort of a certain level of education and know-how, but at the same time, we're not looking for an entire company full of college grads either, because quite frankly, some of the work is just straight labor. So I think there's probably a fine line there between going too far and expecting everybody to be completing every form perfectly with with perfect grammar versus, getting the gist off what the question is and filling out the answers. For me, it's important that they can read those questions, interpret those questions, and answer those questions more so than the spelling and grammar.
Great, thanks. Jennifer here has a question. How often do you perform employee reviews?
I think an employee review is fine to do annually. I don't think, ideally, I think calling those career development meetings is probably better than the concept of an employee review. I think the employee then sees it as an opportunity to share where they'd like to go, and the employer has an opportunity to share what they need to do to get there. So I think kind of renaming that is a good start, and I think annually is fine. Ideally, right at the tail end of the busy season. So in the case of most landscape companies, I think early to mid fall is ideal. I wouldn't do it after the season, like during the winter, because I think everything's kind of out of sight and out of mind at that point. But I think sometime between September and October is ideal for a few reasons. One, I think it's a good way to retain your staff if they have a good idea of what you felt went right and wrong throughout the year, and what your sort of vision is for them in the coming year, and sort of align your vision and theirs in that meeting. I think that's a little more motivating to stick around, and also traditionally landscape employees start to feel a little bit tired and run down in the fall, and I think sitting down and having that discussion then is probably just one more way to motivate them in that tough season. But yeah, I think annually is reasonable.
Okay, great. Erica here, she has a question. Our issue is, where are these people? Where do you find these folks? Colleges, local ads, recruiters. Our biggest struggle is just finding them.
Well, there's a few ways that I would recommend. Start a Facebook page specifically for hiring. I would use LinkedIn Recruiter and target, the more senior people there, landscape supervisors, account managers, project managers. They tend to all be on LinkedIn, and it's easy for you to sort through those people in your area and target them there. On Facebook, you can do ads. Facebook ads in your area work really well. You can target the geographical area and their interests, which help quite a bit. So those are paid ads. And then definitely, I think having a good job ad that really sets itself aside from everything else and really sells a career as opposed to a job on all the common web-based job boards. There's many of them, and some regions, different ones are more popular than others, but Indeed is very popular. And I think if you write a description of the work that, like I talked about earlier, and you really sell that career, you'll find, particularly if you're advertising in the off season in your area, you'll find a lot of employees from other companies and even other industries are on there browsing around, and you'll find you reach some new people. So definitely a combination of your website, a good strong Facebook presence, LinkedIn, and some great career opportunity type advertisements on all the popular websites would be the approach I would recommend. I guess the one thing I kind of skipped there, though, sorry, was local colleges and universities. It's also great to attend any of their job fairs and and get in touch with the professors of those programs, let them know that you have job opportunities, and ideally invite their employees to your facilities for a facility tour. That's another technique that works really well.
Okay. Brian is wondering, what tricks have you found for identifying crew leads? Are the hardest workers the best leaders?
I mean, I think naturally we always gravitate toward the hardest worker as the best leader, and I think that's a great question, because I certainly feel that over the years, in my own ignorance, I think I probably moved some really hardworking, super valuable employees into supervisory roles too quickly, without enough support and training, and then had some fast turnover or unexpected turnover from those people, because the hardest workers tend to set the bar a little higher for themselves, and I think when we move them into supervisory positions without any training, the stress gets to those people faster, because they know that things aren't going as smooth as they should be, and they tend to move on and find a new opportunity, simply because they feel like they failed, and they feel like the company failed, and they just sort of look for a new fresh start, and typically do have the confidence to know that they can succeed somewhere else, because most of these kind of standout hardworking people realize that they're more valuable than others, I think, in doing the work very quickly. So one thing that I did that I found that worked really well is taking the newer supervisors and putting them through Dale Carnegie training. They have some leadership training programs that, you can find Dale Carnegie training in just about every major city in North America. And I feel like, that course really sort of prepares them mentally for leading, others, and dealing with some tough personality issues, and having the confidence, I think, to talk to people in a little bit different way. So my answer is, hard workers are not naturally leaders, but they can make great leaders with a little bit of help and support and training, I think, from the company. But ideally, do that before shifting them into that role, and I think you'll have more success and lower turnover.
Okay. Jennifer is wondering, in your experience, what has been the average turnover for mid-level employees?
I think in my earlier part in my career, I'll say sort of the first 10 years, I had a lot more turnover in that sort of middle 70. But what I found, as we started to get more people who had sort of more years of service, it kind of naturally became lower, I think, because the others that were coming into the fold would see that there were people who had been in the company for a long time and had good career success. They're driving nice cars, living in nice homes, they've got retirement savings. There's good, strong stability in the company, and those people kind of become the mentors, I guess, for the new employees, and kind of become the example of what can happen with that extra effort and interest in the career. But I really think that one of the major turning points for reducing the turnover for us was around that time we introduced the pre-interview program, I think in about my 7th year in business. And just the type of people that were coming into the business, we really noticed that the turnover rate in that sort of middle group of people, or the field staff who are actually executing the work, really started to fall off quickly, because we had people who were more career minded coming into the company. But that said, if you want a ratio, I think a good healthy number is about 20%. in that middle 70. So about 20% of those people are going to turn over as a combination of you sort of churning them out because they kind of fall within the bottom 10%, or they leave because they have different career ambitions. And if you're hearing as the owner that they're leaving because the work's too hard or the hours are too demanding, then maybe you got to revisit your own operation. If you're hearing that a lot, I certainly found myself there over the years. Or sometimes the good ones are they're leaving because they want to go back to school, or they're relocating, or they're going to try out a different industry, or maybe they've decided that landscaping's just not for them at all, and they're going to take a completely different path in life. I think listening to why people are leaving and kind of seeing the patterns will really help you create improvements in different parts of your business. You can't simply just discard every person who leaves as not being the right fit, or being lazy, or whatever the flavor is. But I think each business is very unique that way.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question here. Brian's wondering, when the busy season hits and teams are working close to 60 hours a week, how do you keep people motivated? Any ideas beyond the paycheck itself?
Yeah, I mean, I really believe that an incentive program that's linked to the crew productivity is the answer to that one. I think, creating a crew budget for each supervisor so that they know what their production target is in dollars for the year, and then linking that to a bonus, ideally a percentage of pay. So for example, 10% for the foreman and 5% for the field workers, and that 5% could vary from 1 to 5% depending on years of service. There's a few ways to do that, but them seeing that as the season goes on and they're on track to reach their goal, that they're gonna receive a bonus based on that. So I think in those tough weeks, which inevitably we have in the business, there's the busy season in the spring, and often we have another sort of busy stretch in the fall. I think a guiding light to a little bit of a incentive helps, because ultimately we have to remember that everybody who works for us is ultimately working for themselves. I don't think people come to work for their boss. They come to work for themselves. They come to work so that they can support their families, or they can achieve their financial goals or their career goals. They want to build skills. They like what they do. They like their coworkers. There's all kinds of reasons, but none of those are to make the owner more money. It's usually they come to work for themselves because the job or the career is helping them get from A to B. So, at some point, sometimes after 50 hours a week, people start to feel as though they're being exploited and they're working for the boss because they're being pushed, because they don't really see the need for those extra hours. But I think when it's tied to a financial goal and when it's tied to their bonus, I think them seeing the big picture, it sort of changes a little bit. And I think having crew budgets with financial incentives really help drive that motivation in those tough moments.
Okay, thanks. Mark, on behalf of today's attendees, I want to thank you for the thoughtful presentation and providing the audience with actionable insight into hiring and retaining the best talent for this upcoming season. Unfortunately, we have run out of time and will not be able to answer all of the questions here, but Mark has graciously agreed to answer the questions in a follow-up video that we will email to all attendees. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for taking time out of your day to join us, and we look forward to having you with us again. Make sure to check out the upcoming lineup for the speaker series by visiting golmn.com/speaker series to see our entire lineup. Thanks again for taking time out of your day to join us, and we look forward to having you with us again in the future.